Great Scott!
The Great Scott Show.
And as they head into the final furlong, all of the other radio stations and radio hosts are left in the wake of a keen turn of speed by the Great Scott Show, the champion.
With Scott Prather.
Steal the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the Great Scott Show. Man, I'm glad to be back. Been out this week, to which I'll say,
"Oh, I'm sorry."
Sorry. I wasn't feeling that well.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
But I am feeling good now. And I'm happy to be here. The great Mike Detillier joins us at 7:15 this morning. Man, I feel like I've only been out 3 days this week. I feel like I've been gone for a while. Just happy to be here, guys. Just happy to be here. Not so sure the Saints are happy to be here this football season. Right. I mean, that performance last Sunday was atrocious. We'll get into the Saints with Mike Detillier, the problems, the future. What do you do? What do you do? The next month may decide it, or should it already be decided? We'll get into all of that. We'll talk some hoops. Raging Cajun hoops, 3-0. At home tonight against Louisiana Tech. Bringing it back. That should be fun. That should be fun. Right? Cajuns go claim the Asheville championship on a court that looked like it was colored by a second-grade art class. I mean, that was a weird-looking court in Asheville. But they look good. But now, this is it. Louisiana Tech's got to win over Mississippi College. They lost by 9 at Texas Tech. And now they're going at it tonight. So it's an old rivalry on the hardwood. It really is. I mean, they played one another, 130-something times, I think. 133 times in history. The home team has kind of definitely won a lot, most of the series. But let's go. Cage women's hoops lose their 2 games in Lubbock. Pelicans. Oh, the Pelicans. No Zion the last 2 games, no problem, out with the ankle. They've won 3 in a row. And Trey Murphy is ice cold. And I don't mean ice cold from the field. No, quite the opposite. I mean ice cold in a good way. The expansion of his game has been one of the most exciting developments for the Pelicans this season. No doubt. So they've got 3 wins in a row. CJ McCollum has found his stroke again. They're getting more rest under their legs, being that they're, at home after playing 8 of the first 11 on the road. But they got a tough one on Friday night. Zion should be back then, and they've got a really good team coming in, the Boston Celtics, who own the best record in the NBA. And the Pelicans on Tuesday were on national TV, on TNT. And look good. Got a win against the Grizzlies. Beat them double digits. No Zion. They still beat them. It was a fun game. John Morant put on a show, but the Pelicans put up the W. And after the game, Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith on Inside the NBA had a little conversation that got some people stirred up. They were talking about how the Pelicans, with their core, are they a playoff team? Yes. Can they get past the first round? No, not with this team. And people freaked out. As far as today on November 17th, are they a playoff team? Yes. Today on November 17th, are they a team that can get past the first round? No, probably not. Not today. It's November. The big three of Ingram, CJ, and Zion have not had the time to, play a lot together. They have to figure things out. Well, they play well when Zion's not in there. Yeah, because they had a lot of reps together late last year. And they're a good team without him. But with him, once they gel, the ceiling is really high. I don't think this team's winning a championship this year. But people freaked out because after a game that they won, Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley were being somewhat critical. The points they were making were not off base. They were just, if you're talking about the team here today. To claim that it won't happen or anything, I mean, come on. Ever? That'd be silly. That's not very astute. And the team that they were comparing him to were the Golden State Warriors, who, won 4 championships in 8 years. Not a bad thing, guys. Not a bad thing. But the three-point shooting has opened up. Trey Murphy has just been absolutely on fire. 22 years old, 19 points, 7 of 9 shooting, 5 of 6 from 3, 10 rebounds, a double-double, 3 steals, versatile defense, and getting up with some of the dunks. I mean, some underrated athleticism. It wasn't clicking last year. It is now, and that is a great, great sign moving forward for this team. Plenty of hoops, baby. Plenty of hoops here in the great month of November. From the NBA to college as well. We mentioned it, Louisiana and La Tech tonight. You finally got some, until this week, the first week of college basketball season, outside of an exciting game, a come from behind win by Gonzaga on the boat against Michigan State. You hadn't even had a game involving 2 teams in the top 25 facing off against one another. It's been hard for college basketball. If you follow it at the local level, you're following your team. I get it. On a national level, it's been hard for it to really announce itself. You haven't had the really big game, the really big moment, the really big, okay, we got to lead off SportsCenter tonight because there was this incredible game, incredible highlight. It's kind of just there. While football takes center stage and the NBA takes the seat right behind it, and then after that, feels so weird. I mean, we're here in the middle of November, but this Sunday, the World Cup starts. I mean, the U.S. is playing on Monday in the World Cup, and I know it. I hate that it wasn't this past summer. I do. I hate that it's in Qatar. I do. It was crooked. It shouldn't have been there. We all know that. I mean, you got the stage in the summer. You've got it all. And now, at least from a U.S. sports fan standpoint, having it in November is, okay, it'll be during Thanksgiving week. Thanksgiving week's one of the busiest of the week in sports every single calendar year between football and basketball on every day of the week. Am I complaining about no sports? No. I just, from a calendar standpoint, it would have been nice to have the World Cup at its normal time. But, man, it's been over 8 years since we've watched the United States men's national team in the World Cup. We get to do it next week. So I'm excited about that. College basketball, even when you have a game finally pitting some top 25 teams against each other, like, Texas and Gonzaga, like you had last night, it's not a good game. Texas win by 19? College basketball needs a big moment on the national stage to remind everybody that college hoops is still happening. Now, locally, like I said, if you're following your team locally, you're into college basketball and you're locked in, you're dialed in, you're not paying as much attention to the national side of things. But nationally, they need a moment. You can email the show, Scott at 1033thegoat.com. You can tweet the show at 1033thegoat is the Twitter handle. And we'll have open phone lines after my conversation coming up with Mike Detillier. Pat asks, why is the World Cup now and not in the summer? Because they decided to have it in a country that had no business hosting it, but it's FIFA, so it's crooked, and that's how Qatar got it. And the reason they can't have it in the summer is because it would be too hot. Weather. The country does not have the proper weather to host the World Cup in the summertime, so here it is in November, starting on Monday. And look, make no mistake about it. If the U.S., gets out of group play, if they have some wins, we're going to get into it, but it's just not the same as the summertime when the World Cup is the thing every 4 years. It's uncharted waters for U.S. sports fans. You have your hardcore soccer fans that are into it no matter what, every single World Cup. But you've also got just a ton of fans that, like myself, I'm not following this thing 24/7, 365. I'm going to feel all patriotic whenever the U.S. is playing in the World Cup and pray for miracles and have fun and get into it. And I've always been able to do that whenever there isn't a ton of other things happening. There are a ton of other things happening in the world of sports right now. I mean, gosh. Derek emails. He says, when does the U.S. play? They're scheduled to play Monday at 1 against Wales. And then I think they play the day after Thanksgiving at 1. And then they play Tuesday, November 29th at 1. And then we'll see what happens after group play. And that's 1 in the afternoon, by the way, which is a good thing. Even though it's across the globe, I'm glad we're not watching them at 1 a.m. That wouldn't be fun. Don't go anywhere. It's the Great Scott Show. 1033 The GOAT, the greatest sports talk of all time, simulcast on 1420. I am happy to be back on the airwaves with you. What do the Saints need to do? Do they need to move on from Dennis Allen? Do they need to hit the reset button? How difficult would it be to do that? What's the mindset in the building right now? Mike Detillier, the great Mike Detillier, joins me next right here on the Great Scott Show. Don't go anywhere. We're right back right after this.
If it wasn't for goats, we wouldn't have coffee. Look it up.
I want to get some coffee. You want some coffee?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
And the best sports talk in Acadiana. 1033 The GOAT.
Welcome back into 1033 The GOAT, simulcast on 1420 The GOAT, the greatest sports talk of all time. I'm Scott Prather on the Great Scott Show. And as promised, joining me now, friend of the program, friend to all. He's been in the game a long time. College pro analyst, co-host of Sports Talk over on WWL. You remember him from back in the day with the great Buddy D and all over the place. MikeDetillier.com. Great place to get insight. His draft guide every year is like a draft Bible for many of us. Mike Detillier joins us this morning on the program. Good morning, Mike. Man, how's life? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
You know, I was watching the Pelicans last night and, seeing the crowd at the Smoothie King Center. get into it. And, I've watched all the games this year, often on delay because I could fast forward and have kids. Got to wait till they get to bed. But I was, having been, at the Monday night game against Baltimore for the Saints and having been in the Smoothie King Center, there have been little pockets of time where, the fans in the Gulf South, get into the Pelicans a little bit more than the Saints, but it's usually fleeting. It doesn't really happen for very long. Is there, I know it's, quote, Saints country, and it always will be. I get all of that. But, Mike, are we at a realistic point in time where just because, you love winning, you hate losing, and, you love bright futures, other futures look bleak? Is there a little more of a stronger pulse right now from fans of the Pelicans than the Saints? And I know for a lot of fans, they're fans of both, right? It's not an either-or thing, but just feels like one's trending in the right direction and the other's trending in the complete opposite.
I think there's certainly a lot more interest today. Now, I couldn't have told you that a year ago. It goes to show how quickly things change. Pelicans, tremendous interest in them. And we're talking about in November.
Right.
Okay. And normally you don't get a lot of talk about NBA basketball in late October and November and December. It's normally after the Saints are over with. But because of how the season's going, I think there is certainly that twist to it this year. Because there is a certain reality to the Saints. You can be the biggest fan in the world of the Saints, and we were laughing about this the other day, Bobby. He was like, you did a lot more second-guess shows in losing seasons than winning until I got here. I said, what the hell happened this year? And he was like, I don't know. But he's right about that. But you can see it and kind of feel it in the vibe of people, a lot more interest early in the NBA and in the Pelicans than any time I can remember, to be honest with you. And it hasn't trended toward Pelicans or even the Hornets until after the years started again.
That's just right.
This year you're getting it a lot earlier. So I think they can see it. You can see that Pelicans team is loaded, got a lot of young talent, got some veterans that kind of stabilize everything, but that they're headed in the right direction. And, you got a superstar player when he's healthy, and that's Zion, and he puts them butts in the seats. People come to see him play. And, with Ingram and Alvarado, and I think when we're going to write that story, that trade for C.J. McCollum sort of changed the world for them. Just one quick swoop of a trade, and it sort of changed a lot of attitudes and the way you think about the Pelicans today.
And Mike, I think the thing that I've covered the franchise in the 20 years they've been in New Orleans. The thing that's never quite connected outside of your hardcore fan base, which has always been there, but just making it a lot bigger and, like you said, having it sort of slap in November as opposed to, are they good? Are they in the playoff hunt after All-Star break? Now a lot of people kind of start paying attention. The thing that's been missing until now has been that organic connection with the fan base, right? Like, it wasn't there in years past, even when they were good. It was fleeting. I mean, like I said, hardcore fans get mad at me for saying it, but it's true. Like, maybe you and I are into it, but a lot of people, it's kind of like, oh, that's cool. Now, when is the draft, right? Now, I think with that run last year without Zion, but how they've been able to sort of connect with the community, with the Gulf South, not just New Orleans, but outside of it, and buy in a way that feels real and not put on, as opposed to in the past, it's kind of like this ticking clock. Man, the superstar's going to want to leave. What do we do? It almost feels like this race against the inevitable, whereas this feels totally different. And, you've covered the Saints, longer than anyone that I know, as long as anybody. And, there's always been your hardcore Saints fans. But, man, whenever Katrina happened and you came around in 2006, there was this organic connection that really just could not be unbroken. And it changed things. And I'm not comparing this season to the 2006 Saints as far as the Pelicans go. I'm not. I'm just saying once you finally are able to form that connection, and there's no way to just force it, you just kind of know it when you see it. It really is, to me, when you can kind of just start to feel it and you start to see the difference and you start to see, shoot, man, I'm here in Lafayette, and before the Pelican season opened last month, I was getting lots of emails and interest in people, and I'm like, where? I know I follow them, but where is this coming from? And I really think it's that you have the organic connection with a fan base, and you win, and I think that equals the ultimate sort of interest in a team at a local level.
Yeah, and you've built up. Now you've got a little bit of time that you've been here with a fan base, and you start to see it's almost like building a house. Okay, you see they build kind of the structure early, and they pour the concrete, and you see everything from day one, and then now you near completion. And you say, man, that really looks good. But it sort of sometimes take a while, and then all of a sudden, pow. And I do think right coach, right mix of veterans, and you certainly have some great talent with an Ingram, with Brandon Ingram and Zion and McCollum. But it's people that maybe the blue-collar guy really kind of connects to with an Alvarado. And then last night you saw Trey Murphy get hot, with the threes. And so every night's a little bit different, maybe a little bit different person that makes that move. And that's when you know you got a really good team. Well, when it's different people every night. It's not the same individuals, but it's playing as one, and they get you excited about how they play. And I used to tease Jen Hale about this because she would always ask me, how do you think the broadcast went? And I said, well, I would watch the first quarter and the fourth. I didn't see a lot of the second and the third because NBA basketball you can get a 14-point lead and then all of a sudden you leading by 10 the other side. So I think what you see here is not the start, because I think the start was last year. But what you're seeing here is a fast progression to the top of a franchise that everything connected. And right coach, players, everything's right. And it's just to see how far it's going to take you. Because I do believe in the NBA, you got to walk down that basketball aisle, okay? You got to do it. It's these kind of bang one-hit wonders, that may happen in the NFL every once in a while. It happens every once in a while in Major League Baseball. But for the most part, in sports, at that level, you got to walk it before you win it. And I think for most people, the interest early is, wow, this is a team that could potentially walk it and walk far down that aisle, basketball aisle. And so, it's interesting how a year ago I would have never said that. I wouldn't have, because, you wondered if Zion wanted to be here. Now he has signed a long-term extension. You wondered a little bit about what was happening behind the scenes. They get off to such a bad start a year ago, and you couldn't give away tickets. And I told this story. I got given courtside tickets and everything, and I didn't really feel like going to the game. I was going to watch it on television. And so I leave the studio that day, and I'll pull out, and there's a gentleman who's parking cars at a restaurant. And I recognized him. I used to see him before Saints games, and so I rolled down my window. I said, "Hey," I said, "you won 2 tickets to the Pelicans game?" And he said, "How much?" I said, "No." I said, "If you want them, I'll give them to you." He said, "Where I got to sit?" I said, "Courtside." He's like, "You kidding?" I said, "No." I said, "No, I got a couple tickets. I'll give it to you if you want." And he's like, "Man, I'll knock off at 7, but I can make it there because the game was sort of delayed. It was a TV game." He's like, "Man, I appreciate it." I said, "No problem." He said, "Can I tell you one more thing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Them Pelicans suck." I said, "Okay, I can't do anything about the team, but if you want to go to the game, I'll give you the tickets." And it was just, I think about it because it was almost like a year ago now that event happened, and how today you got 2 courtside tickets, a couple courtside tickets for a game. You don't have to worry about getting rid of them, man. It's people are in line for it. So it's been a complete turnaround, and I think because of the talent and expectations are very high, you have a lot of confidence. Even though he's a young coach, Willie Green understands this game very well and understands the players around him and gets them motivated. And so it's a quick turnaround for something that you could never have guessed a year ago. It's almost like what you're talking about LSU football today.
Right. A year ago today, Mike, for perspective, everybody, the Pelicans lost to the Heat. They were 2-14. Jimmy Butler had a triple-double, and the Pelicans' leading scorer in the game was Nickeil Alexander-Walker. 1 year later, a heck of a lot changes. And you mentioned LSU. I do want to get in LSU with you, but let me circle back to Gail Benson's other team. You were making the house metaphor earlier, and it's kind of like building a house. Despite the fact that the NFC South is, one of the weaker divisions that we've seen in football in quite some time, the Saints, I don't know, man. A lot of fans just feel like tear the house down, get rid of it. Mike, rebuild, remodel, maybe just a new project manager. I mean, there's a lot of places you could go with this metaphor, but some Saints fans feel like the house is kind of on fire right now. Are things as bad on the inside as they seem on the outside right now, as far as the foundation of that house goes? Well,
you are what your record says you are. And don't give me this stuff about injuries. Everybody has them in the NFL. That's going to be a major remodeling job on this home in the off season. It's going to have to be. You don't have the right mix. And I really thought this off season that this would be a team that sort of had a transitional year. You can't lose an elite coach, and you better. That doesn't happen. And so I look at it defensively, that's been the biggest disappointment for me, because basically your front seven, with one exception, and that's Quan Alexander, you returning everyone. And Pete Werner is having a good season until he hurt his ankle, and now he's going to be out a couple of weeks after some surgery. But what's happened there? Their bell cow the last 3 years has been stopping the run. They haven't done any of that. 3 years ago, they were giving up opponents 3.9 yards a rush. Last year, 3.7. This year, it's 4.6. Almost a yard more. And you say, oh, that's not that much, is it? It is if you're trying to stop the run, it is. And what's happened there to the core players of coming up with big plays and turnovers? The only massive change was at safety, where Malcolm Jenkins decided to retire. Marcus Williams got a great deal in Baltimore, and you decided to trade off Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Okay, is those three guys made that big of a difference? I think there's a little bit more to it than that. And I'm not trying to take anything away from those three guys, because all three of them really played extremely well last year. And I think trading away C.D. Deuce, I think that may have sent a bad message to this team. Okay? He was sort of a spark plug guy, and he got under people's skin as an opponent. And he may have started to get under your skin because he wanted to get paid. I get it. Everybody wants to get paid. But to give him away and get peanuts in return, I think is what has angered everyone. Trading him was one thing. Getting really nothing back in return is the anger issue. That you didn't get anything, especially you got nothing this year. You got future draft picks. So, but defensively, where's the energy? Where's the big play? Where's the turnovers? It hasn't happened at all. And I think you could say that about the team, energy. And we hear it all the time. Where's the heart on this team? Where's the energy in this team? It's not there. Not there. And it really surprised me on defense because you had so many of the components back from what was a really good defense a year ago. They gave up the least amount of points in the NFC a year ago. That's totally changed now. You're getting gashed, not only via the air, but on the ground. And by teams that, when you look in the mirror, they look a lot like you. Steelers, I did some shows out in Pittsburgh, and people were saying, man, the Steelers not what they used to be. They're not a real good team, Mike. And I'm like, hey, guess what? The world champs ain't come rolling into town. And I could say the same thing this week. Okay, the people in L.A., well, the Rams aren't a good team. They aren't what they were a year ago. Well, guess what? You come to New Orleans, you ain't placing a top team either. They sort of all look a lot alike, especially in the NFC. I mean, there's a few teams that are different, but they all got a lot of the same issues. If you look at Carolina and Atlanta, and Detroit plays hard, but sometimes not real smart. The Bears, Justin Fields has come through the last couple of weeks, but defensively they absolutely lousy. The Packers look like a shell of themselves today. It's a lot of looking. Arizona, can't convince me that that's a top team. It is shocking how it is the haves and the have-nots, and very little in between. Either you playing real well or you not. And you look a lot like the Saints. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this has been a huge disappointment this year. And it sits on the shoulders of their defense because you were built to win on defense, special teams. We all knew offensive line play. I mean, I could tell in training camp they didn't have the 5 blocks of granite up front. The quarterback issue, we've done this the last couple of years. Since Drew Brees retired, the next quarterback to lead you to really good seasons, he ain't on the roster. He's somewhere playing college football today. But how that was going to kind of wield out, we didn't really know. But we felt pretty strong. Defensively, special teams would be a strong point of this team, and yet that didn't happen either. What happened here? What unpeeled it so quickly? And, it's not going to get too much better. You may get a win or two more, a couple wins more, but this is a bad football team right now. There is Superman ain't coming in to save the day for you. Okay, you might want to believe that. Okay, and that's fine. Always hope. It's a small word, but it is there. But this team is who they are this year. You're not going to change that. They're mistake prone. They are turnover prone. Yeah, they do have injuries, but so do other teams in the NFL. Take a look at the Rams. They're playing with their third-string left tackle. This is the 4th center the Rams have. Their 4th one. you're not real sure. Stafford did get cleared, and he did practice fully yesterday, but you had your quarterback knocked around. You're down to John Wolford at quarterback. They also had, problems on the defensive front seven, keeping people healthy. Their secondary's been sort of beat up. Okay, you looking at the exact mirror of what you are here in New Orleans. It's strange. And the Steelers, in covering that game, it was the exact same thing. They had a bunch of injuries, and they're in issues of trying to rebuild. But the Rams aren't a good team, but neither are the Saints.
Yeah,
and that's not going to change. Even if you get a W, what does that matter? Look what you got down the road on this schedule. It ain't going to get any easier. It's not going to get any easier. So it's been a very disappointing season, but it does go to show you, without a star quarterback and an elite head coach, you got issues.
Elite head coach.
And it's going to be tough to dig you out.
They had one in Sean Payton. I think of the fans complaining about him or Drew Brees' arm strength toward the, quote, end of his career, and I roll my eyes. I remember telling them all, like, you don't know. And not to say that it wasn't time for Drew to retire, but I'm just...
It was time.
Correct. It was time, but those that were sort of wanting to push him out sooner or complaining about it all, I'm like, you don't know how good you have it. And... last year I got accused of pointing out who the Saints were missing, and I'm like, look, there were some of those games, the Thanksgiving night game against the Bills, the Monday night game against the Dolphins, where because of injuries, because of COVID, they literally had, they were playing Hall of Fame game type rosters. Like, that's different than what the Saints are dealing with now. And the other thing I point out, Mike, is last year, despite all of that, all of the obstacles, all of the players they were missing, you never looked at the team and said, man, it feels like they don't even want to be here right now. Like, where's the effort? Where's the tackling? You didn't get that last year, even when, they were kind of knocked down. And that's why they were in the playoff hunt until the very last snap of the season. And I watched the team this year, and you mentioned defense. The head coach was the former defensive coordinator. That's his side of the ball. That's where he specializes. And we're only on the outside, and Dennis Allen is far from a, charismatic guy on the microphone. Is there potential here where he's gone after this year, Mike? How much will the next, month dictate what direction they move this offseason?
I think when you look at it, you always look at what people have done in the past. I don't, unless it would really get a lot worse, I think he gets another year. And he'll do what most head coaches are kind of forced to do. You got to make massive changes in your coaching staff. And so I think he does get another year, to be honest. I don't see Gail Benson and Dennis Lauscher and Mickey Loomis pulling the rug from him. I don't see that. So to answer the question, I think he does get another year, but he's going to be forced to make changes on his coaching staff. And then when you look at in the offseason, you already, and it's been worse, you're like $55 million over the cap now.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. It's something in the dynamics of a team that changes every year. And Bill Parcells used to say that every year, it's like a different jigsaw puzzle. You throw all the pieces down, and it's piecing it together. And every year is a little different now. Free agency has done that. It's going to happen in college football, too. Okay? You're going to start to see that applied to it because there are so many changes. It's sort of a commuter world of players and coaches like never before, and you see it in the NFL. It's piecing it together. And so you're going to have to make some tough decisions, and I think everything is on the table for the Saints. Players that you might not think they would look to deal off, don't be surprised that you see those type of deals. Just because I think maybe you feel it's not the right dynamic for this team today. Now, here's the tricky part, making the right decision on who to keep and who not to. Because I think they underestimated the emotional and talent level of C.D. Deuce. Man, I'd have kept him for a year. Okay, he might have been unhappy. He didn't get a new deal in Philly, did he? He's still playing. Who leads the NFL in interceptions?
That'd be C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
He's playing for his money.
Yep.
The same people that will tell you, well, you know, if you gave him a lot of money, he might be a different player. It might be, but it never affected him before. He loved to play football, loved the game. And, well, they trained him away. He's not going to play hard unless he gets a new contract. All I know is he's playing his butt off in Philly. It's the same sort of narrative on Michael Thomas, and it's a little different situation. But people, he signed a new contract, didn't do anything. That's not true. He signed a new contract in the summer of 2019, had a great year in 2019. It's been the 1 year after when the injuries started to mount up and the discussion of should I have surgery and not have surgery. And you could tell in Sean's voice he was upset that he didn't go through the surgery. And some guys don't like to go through surgery. You know what? You got to do it. It was a wrong decision. And then what's happened this year, we saw him in training camp. He wasn't good. He was unbelievable. He beat everybody. It was almost like line them up and I'll beat them. And every day when he was practicing, he was beating them. And then all of a sudden gets hurt again. But do you want to go down that rabbit hole again? You got to ask yourself that. Okay, as good as he is, do you want to go down that rabbit hole with him again? Or do you try to do something to restructure and deal him off? You're not going to get a lot back because now you've got a player that's played very little in 2 years. And so, man, you're in a bit of a quandary here because financially it costs you. You can't just cut him loose. You know, it's going to cost you. There is a price to pay when you put it on the credit card. And so I think there are going to be a lot of different options discussed this offseason. I do think Allen gets another year. I really think just because I don't see Gail Benson or Dennis Lauscher or Mickey saying, you know, after 1 year he's gone. Now, are you putting off the inevitable? You might be, but I don't see them getting rid of him after this year. I don't. I know a lot of fans feel that way. Hey, we know what it is. You got to move on. But I don't see management doing that.
Interesting. You know, it's hard to judge it from the past because, you know, it's not like the Saints have had tons of head coaches in their history. And, you know, Gail Benson is running things, or she's the owner anyway. It's not Tom anymore. And we saw what they did on the other side of it with the Stan Van Gundy hire. But I tell people a lot, it's different, not just a different sport. Allen's been there a while. It's definitely a complicated situation and one that isn't really fun for anybody right now. We'll see what happens Sunday against the Rams, but bigger picture is kind of where the Saints are looking. And, you know, Mike, I know for you, with your draft guide and how much folks are into the draft, you know, that there's the belief, well, maybe Sean Payton will go somewhere, and then the Saints will get a first-round pick, and blah, blah, blah. That's all ifs. Right now, the Saints don't have a first-round pick, and in a year where you're struggling a lot, it's just pouring salt in an open wound is all it is. Yeah,
and look who's got your pick. Arguably the best team in the NFC. You know, they got your pick, and it's a top 5 pick today. And I think every day or every week when it passes, Sean Payton's stock goes up. You know, because all these teams and owners, most of them today made their money pretty quickly. Not all of them, but the majority of them sort of hit big one way or another. And they, you know, if you're a multi-billionaire, you lack one thing: patience. What? I mean, don't be telling me about rebuild, you know, because that's not part of their lexicon. That's not part of their world. They want success now. And that's why Peyton's probably going to be the first $20 million coach somewhere where he's going to make $20 million a year. That some team feels, hey, he's the final piece. And we all know Sean had a lot of say in personnel. If you want to believe otherwise, then I got a ski lodge behind my home here on the bayou to say it too. Sean had a tremendous amount of say on personnel. But, there always comes a time that it's time to leave. And his mentor was always Parcells, who was a bit of a vagabond coach, okay? Giants, Jets, Cowboys, Patriots. He's a front office guy with the Dolphins. He just sort of bounced around. He enjoyed those short stints, get your team to a certain level, then he wanted to move on. Sean wasn't like that. He stayed here a long time. In the NFL, Scott, I don't think we're going to live long enough to see a coach last as long as Peyton did here.
It's rare.
We're not going to see it.
It's rare.
That's always a long stretch for him, where you had a head coach and a quarterback the same, other than 1 year. And then Sean saw the real world, too. That Drew Brees, when he was in his prime, he fixed a lot of the ills that were on your team. The disappointment that, and I think even Sean would say it, even though he won't publicly say it, he just walked away with one championship. Because you had teams like in 2011, what happened in 2017 in Minnesota, to lose that playoff game in New Orleans against the Vikings, the no call, all this stuff. It's tough to get to the big game. It's tough. I think the Patriots, just because they did it so many times, and it almost seemed like it was easy, and it's not. And I think years after we all get out of this business, they're going to be writing books on Belichick and what he did in New England and what Nick Saban has done at Alabama. It's remarkable, that longevity to win and win at the highest level. That's not the norm in pro sports, and certainly not in the NFL.
Mike Detillier, our guest, 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420. I'm Scott Prather. It's the Great Scott Show, 103.3 The GOAT, KPEL Lafayette. Mike, want to talk some college football with you. I know we usually talk some Cajuns, too. I'll talk some Cajuns coming up in the next segment. They're heading to Florida State this Saturday. Florida State, who beat LSU to open the season by a point in a wild game, and the amount of, I get it. It's social media, right? After any game, win or lose, you're going to see exaggeration. That's just the nature of it. But man, some of the tweets after LSU lost to Florida State about Brian Kelly, they were something else, Mike. I mean, having said that, I'm not going to sit here and act like I thought in November 17th LSU would be a dark horse for a college football playoff spot, and I know a lot still has to happen for that to happen. But the fact that it's just a reality now is it's something. I mean, obviously I look at Jaden Daniels and I remember the game at Florida, because coming off the Tennessee game, I'm like, is LSU going to go win in the swamp based on how they played? And it really sort of clicked for him then, and it's been just a lot of good stuff. Harold Perkins, he's the best defensive player in college football. A lot of things. We talk about which way you're trending. LSU's trending upward right now. Did you foresee this back early in the season? Obviously we thought they would improve, but not what they're doing right now, right?
No one would have thought this. Before the season, I picked them 8-4, and just understanding that the cupboard was thin, but what you inherited, especially on defense, was pretty good. And I had a SEC head coach tell me, man, when I took over, I didn't have no B.J. Ojolari or Ollie Gay or Jaqueline Roy, where he threw in Mason Smith. Mason went down in game one. Or Micah Baskerville or Greg Penn or Jay Ward or Major Burns. I didn't have any of those guys when I took over, but Brian was able to make it work with some of the leftover players from the prior regime, him using the transfer portal extremely well and getting unbelievable play, and I've never seen this in my time, from 4 freshmen. Your 2 starting tackles, and your starting tight end in Mason Taylor, and then Harold Perkins. So a couple weeks ago, before the Alabama game, Wilson Alexander came on with us on Sports Talk, and he's like, Mike, you've seen a lot more LSU football than me. How good is Perkins? And I told him, you know what? Other than Honey Badger, I can't remember another freshman that made that big of an impact, tilt-the-field type impact. Derek Stingley was really good as a true freshman. I almost say it. He was really, really good. But Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu was unbelievable as a true freshman. And then I watched Perkins against Alabama, and then what he did last week, he sort of took over against Arkansas. So Wilson said, Mike, I'm going to use that quote. I said, okay, that's great. He does things you can't teach. He's got great instincts. His foot speed is off the charts. I mean, when he tracked down Hornsby, who was really fast, and he was part of the football 400-meter state championship relay team and a track sprinter in high school, and he not only did it once and twice, he did it 4 times, just tracked him down in the open field. It sort of reminds you a little bit of, and I wrote this about Derek Thomas, and that was my comp. People will say, well, he reminds me of Micah Parsons and stuff. He really reminds me a lot more of the late, great Derek Thomas. And Derek was like that. So I went back in my notes, and I saw what I wrote on my draft guide about Derek Thomas, and it was like he's a cheetah out in the jungle. And he's just waiting for game to pass him, and then he hunts you down. And that's what Perkins does. But you think about the dynamics of all of that working, and the Tennessee game, man, you got the tar kicked out of you that day. But it was a defining moment for Brian and understanding where this team had to be. And I think they bought into it after that game, that he's the right guy. And Ryan Harvat and I, we do a show for BetMGM, and he got hired on a Monday, so I had to do second guess, and then I got a quick snack, and then on my way back home, I did the show with Ryan. I couldn't believe, because I knew that Brian's a really good coach, well organized, smart, a good recruiter, has a good support staff and assistant coaching staff around him. How much negativity was thrown at Kelly the day he got hired? I'm not even talking about the Florida State game. The day he got hired, he's not going to fit. And my thing is, wait a minute, where the hell did Nick Saban grow up? Or where did Les Miles grow up?
Dale Brown.
Dale, come on, that has nothing to do with it. Zilch. But you had a lot of people who believed that. And at the Florida State game, that was the thing they were able to throw the trump card down. That, hey, I told you that he's not a good fit here. I told you. Remember what I called and told you? Okay. But I don't hear from him anymore. Those days are gone. And you see how well he's been able to piece together recruiting. And, man, he's got it rolling now. Now, okay, he's different personality-wise. He's different than Les, and Coach O was different than Les, and I didn't grow up with him. like I did when it was wrong. So our relationship is different in how he'll tell me some things, and sometimes he's close to the vest with it. And I get it. You don't have to tell me everything. But I can see it. They bought into it. But it was the development of the offensive line, which was a major question mark going into the season. And you couldn't tell by what happened last Saturday, but Jaden Daniels changed the world for him. I've never seen a quarterback that can run like what Jaden can at LSU. Never. There's not been a guy like him. Listen, a lot of people throw out other names, but man, Daniels' speed is really impressive. You think you got an angle on him, and yet he run right past you. And he's gotten better as a passer. He's still not there yet. I think a lot of it has to do with him maybe locating his secondary receivers and also trusting the talent at receiver that not everything got to be high school open. Just throw it up there. That guy's going to go out and catch it. And so we've seen the improvement with Jaden, and he's taken over as a leader too. That's the other part about it. When he came in here, there was a lot of debate what was going to exactly happen. Because I do know one thing: Brian Kelly sent Miles Brennan to the Manning Passing Academy. Because I know how that works. Archie will call the head coach and say, "Who's your starting quarterback? Who you project?" Because I don't want any quarterback controversy stuff here. Brian Kelly sent Miles. He didn't send Jaden Daniels. Now, Jaden came Saturday of the Manning camp, but he wasn't the guy that Coach Kelly sent. He sent Brennan. And in that situation, and so, man, it's a magical run. I had somebody tell me this and sort of remind me the other day, and I'll always say this. I love the unknown of life. Now, some people don't. Some people don't like it at all. I want to know ahead of time. I'm scared of the unknown. I love that part of life. I lived another life before I did sports, so to speak. So I get it, but you got to understand that that's the story. That's really the story this year has been the transformation of LSU from going to around 40 players on your roster to seeing what Kelly has been able to build in so quickly. And you go through game one and you lose a top player like Mason Smith for the season, and you didn't play well and you were miscombobulated, and now you're going to go to the SEC championship game. Ain't nobody could have predicted that. No one.
No.
You might have predicted 8 games, and I did, or maybe even 9 games. But no one, and including myself, would have predicted where they're at today. And I think even Brian probably wouldn't have. To be honest, I think if you put him on the lie detector machine, he'd blow that circuit. If he said, "Yeah, I thought we'd be in the SEC championship game in Atlanta." Come on, it's been an unbelievable ride for Kelly and this football team, and to think that 4 freshmen, all these grad transfers, and about 40 guys left over from the prior regime. That's what you're winning with. But then I talked to Lincoln Riley, and he was like, okay, Kelly's winning with that. I have 53 new players at USC. And look where USC's at.
Yeah.
53.
Yeah.
Now, he got the third quarterback now. That did sort of change the world for him, landing Caleb. But, man, I think, Scott, we in the new world of college football where you're going to see this happen not just in 2022. You're going to see it happen every year. That some team, a coach comes in, there's some talent, he uses the transfer portal, he gets really good play out of a handful of freshmen, and they right up there. They're in the ring, fighting for it. Everybody thought name, image, likeness, transfer portal would kill college football. Today, there's more interest in college football than ever before. than ever before.
You look at Mike Detillier, our guest, great stuff. 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420, great scat show. Last thing for you, Mike, looking at it, part of the interest is the college football playoff. And all of the debate and the discussion, and it changes weekly, and I get all that. And that was true back when it was the BCS, and it'll still be true even when they expand the college football playoff to include more teams. And yes, some games will lose in the regular season. A few games will lose the overall feel of, man, this kind of feels like a mini playoff game in a way, but I think it'll bring that feeling to some other games, right? More games, more teams involved. Heck, group of 5 teams. But with all of that, let me ask you this, and then we'll let you run, and we always appreciate the time. At Mike Detillier on Twitter, everybody, go follow him if you're not already. You know where to find his stuff. You've been following him for years. I don't see a scenario where if Tennessee wins out, LSU would get in over Tennessee. Now, there's some that say, hey, you win the SEC. I'm like, look, you'd have one more loss and they beat you, you're placed by a lot. That's just the only potential scenario if Tennessee wins out where LSU would get in is if the SEC were to get 3 teams in. And for the record, as good as LSU has been and as much as they've surprised us all, as you said, I still wouldn't predict them to beat Georgia, but that's just me. Do you see a scenario where if it's not 3 SEC teams getting into the college football playoff, where LSU could actually get in, assuming Tennessee doesn't lose? And when you look at their schedule, I'm not expecting them to lose another game.
It would be very difficult to keep LSU out if you won out and winning and beating Georgia in the SEC championship. It would be difficult. And Tennessee's had a great run, and they do have that big victory against you. But, man, it would be really difficult for the committee to say the SEC champion does not get into the Final Four. Yeah. Really difficult for that to happen. And then it would probably be Georgia and LSU. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the other thing, because now the mix is who else is going to go in? Okay, Ohio State. Could you see an Ohio State, Michigan? Let's say Ohio State beats Michigan. Let's say it's 23-21. And using the scenario you bring up that LSU would beat Georgia, and I don't think that. I think Georgia's. They are who they are. I think they're the top team in college football today. That those would be the 4. And what happens to TCU? Okay, and you could say, yeah, TCU ain't that good. Okay, all I know is if you roll with an undefeated record, that's going to be difficult to keep them out.
If they're undefeated, they're in. If they're undefeated,
yeah. But again, that's a big if. And
sure.
A lot of people last week, Bobby and I, we disagreed on this because you said, Mike, I think this is the week. I think Texas beats them. And I said, man, listen, the one thing I've watched with TCU is, and I didn't think their defense would play that good against Texas, but, man, they can score points. And they're entertaining, and they can smoke you. They hit you with the tsunami offensively. What's surprising is how well they play defensively against Texas. Then what happens if you got a one-loss USC team? Because that's where the other pressure point's going to be. And I don't think USC they certainly don't have much talent on defense. That's a major rebuild for Lincoln, and he knows it. But, boy, you got a star quarterback, and you can put up points. I think all of that sort of works itself out, to be honest with you. I think it all works itself out. But you're going to have 2 SEC teams in the Final Four. I have no doubt about it. Having 3 would really be stretching it, and that may mean that if LSU would beat Georgia, Georgia's still in it. The committee would have a difficult time saying, no, we're going to pick the team that didn't play in the SEC championship instead of the champ. You couldn't do it. Couldn't look yourself good in the mirror and make that decision. And Tennessee may be regulated to have to play, in another bowl game, but it's going to be outside the Final Four. And it's been a magical run for Tennessee, too. It's been a great run. And it's, I think, the blueprint of what I think Brian would like for to happen at LSU. And that's for Hendon Hooker to come back and played another year after he sort of thought about, because he told me at the Manning camp, I thought about it seriously, coming out early, because he had really pieced together a really good season. And he said, you know what, I decided I'm going to come back and play another year. Can Brian convince Jaden to do that? That's the biggest recruit of this offseason.
No doubt.
Biggest recruit, getting Jaden Daniels to come back and play another season. And, man, they got a couple freshmen. A couple of their coaches have told me, and Brian's hinted toward it also. Another guy to watch is DeMario Tolan, who highly recruited player from the Florida area. He was an early commit to Orgeron's staff. He hurt his back, had back surgery this summer, so he was a little slow from coming back from the injury. But when you talk to the defensive coaches there, and even Brian brought this up a couple of weeks ago, that, man, that guy's really good. Really, really good. Now, you see him play a lot on special teams, and now they've moved him. He's the backup to Micah Baskerville. But Kelly sort of indicated it's going to be difficult to keep him off the field. That you could have Greg Penn, Perkins, and Tolan at the linebacker position, and you get Mason Smith back. Because you're going to lose B.J. and Ali Gay to the NFL. You're going to lose those guys. But, they got it stacked. But the biggest recruit is going to be Daniels. And to convince him he's better off coming back and play another year and let his draft stock rise like what we've seen with Hendon Hooker, who's played really, other than the Georgia game, he has really played off the charts. But not too many people have played well against Georgia this year. And that's as big a surprise to me as anything, too. Okay, how can you lose 15 guys to the NFL, have 4 guys sign free agent contracts because they had 15 drafted players, 4 guys sign undrafted contracts, 13 players in the transfer portal left Georgia. Look where they're at today. But there was one major guy there that decided to come back, Stetson Bennett. And so, man, not having the quarterback makes all the difference in the world. Makes all the difference. But goes to show you how stacked that they are on defense when you lose as much as they did and to kind of reload the rifle. And, man, Bobby has a comment he always tells me about bend but don't break. And I said that might apply to most teams, but it don't apply to Georgia. There's bend but don't break. They break you, and then they bend you over, and they spank your backside. Man, because they come at you differently than other teams. They are aggressive. They take a lot of chances. They show you looks and then pull out of that same look and then show you to look again, and then they do something different. It's what Kirby does extremely well defensively. But how well they played on offense has been impressive. And Bennett's a better player today than he was a year ago.
Absolutely. I mean, it was all about what he can't do, and I think folks are finally starting to come around thinking, man, Mike, he was committed to go play for Billy Napier at UL, and then Georgia at the last minute was like, hey, you can gray shirt. I don't remember all the details, and that was the school he grew up rooting for. So, and he's doing pretty well with some NIL deals he's got over there in the state of Georgia.
They built. Name me the receivers at Georgia.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't do it right off the top of my head.
But look what they got at tight end.
Oh,
and they got 3
God.
of them.
They have 3 All-American. I know they're not all going to be All-American, but they have 3 All-American tight ends.
And so it's not like you lighting everybody up, throwing the football all over the field, and it's what you see at USC and some of the other places. No, they do it sort of old school. They run the football well. They beat you up in the trenches. And, boy, are they aggressive. And it's defense 101 when you watch Kirby. He throws you a lot of different looks. They have a lot of little different stunts. They move their linemen a little bit right before the snap. It's a lot of different things for an opposing quarterback the process of exactly where they're coming from. And then all of a sudden he sends a cornerback blitz or a safety blitz or a delayed linebacker blitz. It's not all about beating you up front, and they win there. But, man, it's where that pressure's coming from. Where's that fourth guy coming from? And he disguises it so well. And yet, look, the mass exodus out of there to the NFL. And when you win like what they do, there's going to be a lot of transfer. Man, I ain't playing here. I got to go somewhere else. They had 13 guys leave, transfer portal people. So with 15 and 4, it's just 19, and 13 guys transfer portal. They looked at chunk off of that team that was missing from a year ago, and they right back in the hunt for the national championship. Georgia's the new Alabama today. Bottom line, they're the new Alabama.
They've got the horses, and outside of just kind of falling asleep at the wheel against Missouri, they've lived up to it all season, with the exception of one Saturday, and they still got the win, of course. Mike Detillier, it's always a win when we bring him on. At Mike Detillier on Twitter, you know where to hear Mike. Sports Talk on WWL, all over the place. MikeDetillier.com to learn more, and he's just doing radio hits all the time. Has for years. He comes on this show a couple times a year. He comes on this station multiple times a year. We always appreciate it, Mike. You know me, man. I could talk football with you all day, every day, but you've been very generous with your time. We appreciate it. And shoot, man, we'll talk to you again in the near future. But
yeah, give me a call, but nope, always my pleasure to do it, Scott. Thank you.
You got it. That is Mike Detillier. All the best, Mike. We'll take a quick timeout. We'll come back, reset. What did Dustin the Diamond Poirier do when Michael Chandler fish hooked him? Exactly what he should have. We'll give you the details on that. The great Paul Allen had some epic calls, and the Vikings went over the Bills. We've got that audio for you. UL at Florida State this Saturday. We'll dig into it, all of that and more. Don't go anywhere. The Great Scott Show continues after this.
If it wasn't for goats, we wouldn't have coffee. Look it up.
I'm gonna get some coffee. You want some coffee? No, thank you. I'm fine.
And the best sports talk in Acadiana. 103.3 The Goat.
Open up my window again. Open up my window again. I can hear death calling my name. I can hear death calling again. I swear to God, things ain't gonna change.
Welcome back into the Great Scott Show, 23 after the hour. 103.3 The GOAT, simulcast on 1420. It's the greatest sports talk of all time. Phone lines are open if you want to jump in, 337-269-1077. Lafayette's own Dustin Poirier, the Diamond. Now, I can't play the audio for you because it has some language in it that maybe the FCC would prefer not to air on terrestrial radio. But Dustin, incredible fight Saturday night against Michael Chandler. I mean, what a battle. And Dustin looked like his stamina was on full display. He was in better shape. You got to round 3, he just looked more fresh. You know, round 1 felt like they're feeling each other out. Round 2, Chandler got a little bit of an upper hand. In fact, used his hand to illegally perform a move against Dustin. He fish hooked him. No, that is not legal in a UFC fight. No. Absolutely not. And if you don't know what that is, that's when you insert a finger or fingers of one or both hands into someone's mouth or nostrils or other orifices and pull away from the center line of the body. So, you just start pulling on the side. And that can pull or tear or lacerate tissue. didn't get caught in the fight. He got away with it. But you know why it didn't get caught? And you know why it didn't really impact Dustin? Because he bit the bleep out of his finger. Biggest infraction he committed was when he fish hooked Poirier. And Chandler was landing blows on Poirier's head. And, he tried to intentionally blow blood in his face while working from the top position. I mean, he was fighting dirty. Tries to fish hook him, and Dustin bites the you-know-what out of his finger. That's the way to do it right there. Fish hook didn't have an impact on the fight. It was a classic fight, but what a great win for Dustin, man. What a great win for him. He's been putting on some great fights. It's really come together for him. I know his platform was elevated by his fights with McGregor. But, Dustin's been in the game a long time. He has been working his rear end off. He's put himself in this position. He deserves every single good thing that has come to him and will continue to come to him. He's put in the time. And he's a hell of a fighter. A hell of a fighter. 103.3 The GOAT. Louisiana taking on Florida State. They're going to need to put up a hell of a fight in this one. Cajuns are a 24-point betting underdog. Florida State, you get the Cajuns on your schedule late November. Florida State they went to Syracuse. They got a big win on the road. And then they got Florida next week. But they got the Cajuns Saturday at 11 a.m., and as Coach said last night, Coach Michael Desimo, he said, look, the thing you got to do is it's just got to be another game. It can't be bigger than what it is. It's football. Go out there, do your job, execute. Keep it close for a while. Don't turn the ball over, something that the Cajuns have done well in most, not all, but most of their games this year. And maybe get a big play in another phase of the game, a scoring play in a phase of the game that did an offense. Those are usually the recipes for trying to get an upset win on the road against the notable P5. It's a big one. And if you win it, you're bowl eligible. Coach and the players that have spoken, they've made it abundantly clear. They're not thinking about Texas State and the final game of the regular season and all. They're thinking about Saturday. Get off to a strong start. There you have it. Bottom of the hour. There is an individual in the world of sports that I have been telling you guys for years is an international treasure. He doesn't play sports. He just calls the action. But he truly is. He's man's a treasure. And really, most of you kind of, know it from one call that we used to play on here all the time.
Brett Favre goes back to pass. He pumps. Now he fires over the middle. Intercepted. I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. It was intercepted by Tracy Porter, near side to the 40, and John Sullivan runs him down at the 47-yard line. You've got to be kidding me. I can't believe what I just saw.
Looking at that play, he should have just held on to a call. He could have easily gotten 5 or 6 yards if he would have just pulled that thing down and dove forward.
But why do you even ponder passing? You can take a knee and try a 56-yard field goal. This is not Detroit, man. This is the Super Bowl.
The great Paul Allen, play-by-play man for the Vikings, who has had so many Classic radio calls.
Snap good, spot down. Walsh's kick is up, and it is no good. He missed it. Are you kidding me? The season can't end like that.
He's an international treasure. He's the best. He's the best. I mean, he's just awesome.
17, 16, 15.
See, they have to go deep into the end zone.
We better put some people in the end zone, right, Joe?
That's exactly right.
I mean, there's nobody inside the 10.
Get back, guys.
Here it is. The season's on the line. 2 receivers left and right. McCown takes the snap. He steps up. He's all by himself. Fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No! No! The Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs. I believe it was caught by Nate Poole. He's being mugged by his Cardinal teammates. They're Minnesota Vikings crying on the field.
That call from 18 years ago. Nate Poole, by the way, one-time Saint, didn't last long, didn't even make an active roster. But my point is, I've always been a fan of him.
Look at that powerful kid dominate.
And some thought it was tongue-in-cheek. It wasn't. And Paul Allen came on this show years ago, and we had a great conversation. And you hear his voice in the open to my show. Every time you listen, you hear Paul Allen's voice when you listen to The Great Scott Show.
Great Scott!
The Great Scott Show.
And as they head into the final furlong, all of the other radio stations and radio hosts are left in the wake of a keen turn of speed by The Great Scott Show, the champion.
There it is. See, Paul Allen has always called horse races. And in early 2000s, the Vikings held an open tryout. An open tryout. They were letting people from the public, I mean, this is according to Paul, this is a story he told, audition to be the play-by-play voice of the Vikings. Can you imagine an open audition to be the play-by-play voice of the Saints? But maybe the Vikings knew what they were doing because they got Paul Allen, who I've joked, he kind of sounds like a stereotypical Viking from like a children's cartoon. Like, ah! And there has been a video circulating this week of him calling the final moments of the Vikings' incredible win over Buffalo last Sunday. There were so many plays in that game that were just mind-blowing. The game's over. No, it continues. Wait, Justin Jefferson did what? Oh, my God, Kirk Cousins didn't make it. Wait, they didn't throw the flag? Wait, it was down. Wait, it's in? Oh, my God, a fumble in the end zone? Oh, field goal. Oh, Jefferson again? Oh, intercept. I mean, one after the other. And my boy Paul is finally getting his due. You go on social media and you see LeBron James. Wow, Paul Allen is a national treasure. You see Pat McAfee and his millions of followers saying, I never even knew this guy existed, man. I've missed out on so much electricity. You have. And people that say, oh, it's satire, he's unprofessional. No. No. Oh, it's homerism. He is not a radio announcer for Westwood One. He is not a TV announcer for CBS. He is the play-by-play guy for the Minnesota Vikings. And I remember asking him, like, have you ever been told by your higher-ups to maybe ever tone it down? And he was like, no, they've never told me what to do. He said, now, they taught me when I was young, when things are going bad for the team, not to be overly cumbersome or whatever. You know, you still got a game to call, but his calls from Sunday they're great. And the video of it, seeing him with the binoculars, seeing him in the moment, it's tremendous stuff. Have you heard him? You're about to. We'll play it for you right after this. This is 103.3 The GOAT, simulcast on 1420. I'm Scott Prather. We'll be right back right after this. More Paul Allen.
Don't let someone get your goat. There's plenty to go around for everyone. 103.3 The GOAT, the greatest sports talk of all time.
Look at that powerful kid dominate. Get in there.
Welcome back into the Great Scott Show. Coming at you on a Thursday. So glad to be back. Tomorrow, Gus Kattengale will join me. Corey Diaz, Education football beat writer from The Advertiser, will join me as well. We'll talk more about that matchup. Paul Allen, let's give it to you. Minnesota Vikings play-by-play man. A legend in my book. He was enjoying himself. The closing moments of regulation and overtime. The big calls from Paul last Sunday.
And he caught it at the Bills 40. What a grab! First and 10 Vikings from the 17. Here's Cousins with a pass over the middle. Caught by Jefferson at the 3, and he paid for it. 4th and goal from inside the 1, trailing by 4 with 50 seconds to go. Cousins under center. Kirk sneaks, pushed by C.J. Ham, and no signal. No signal.
Oh, he didn't make it.
They said he didn't make it.
They said he didn't make it.
You lucky suckers. The ball is, right next to the goal stripe. So Josh Allen needs to get this thing out somehow, or take a safety.
Even if they get a safety, there's very little time left on the clock. But
that would make it a field goal, you lose game with 40. No, Josh Allen, 6'5", 240. Watch this. First down from the goal stripe for the Bills. Josh Allen puts Gabe Davis in motion, and Davis is behind Allen, and he tried to push him. He didn't get out of there.
He didn't get out.
He did not get out. That's a safety. Give it to us. Give us a safety.
Look at what's taking so long.
Oh, the ball came out.
Down.
Yes, the Vikings are going to win.
Are you kidding me?
Yes, drop that ball, Josh Allen.
That ball came loose.
Holy cow. 29-yard try left hash for Tyler Bass. Snap spot. Bass. Game tied. 2 seconds to go. 30-30. Well, 5:58 to go in overtime. 3rd and 10 from the Bills 26. Vikings with 1 timeout left empty. Backfield, Cousins shotgun. Bills rush 4 this time. Kirk straight in the pocket. Throws to the right. Caught! Jefferson! At the 2-yard line!
In double coverage.
Snap spot. Joseph. Yes! Vikes lead 33-30. Woo! Allen back to pass in the pocket to the end zone. Yes! It is intercepted by Patrick Peterson! And he slides down! Woo! And the Minnesota Vikings are 8-1!
Like I said, legend. 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420. We've covered a lot today. Hoops, football, announcing the works. Phone lines are open, 337-269-1077, if you want to get in on the Great Scott Show. Good morning. Welcome into the show. Hello.
Good morning. This is Coach. How are we doing this morning?
Good, Coach. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy that you're feeling better. Glad that you're back with us.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I just heard that playback. Man, I didn't get a chance to watch that game, and I happened to be walking in right when the field goal, the thing was taking place for them to make the decision on the team who had won. So I looked at the game, and I saw them jumping around after it was over. I said, wow, must have been an exciting game. And the more I'm hearing about this game, like what you just played, I'm starting to be concerned for my Dallas Cowboys. Aren't they playing Dallas this weekend?
Who does Dallas have Sunday?
To my knowledge, I think they're playing Dallas. I think Dallas is playing the Vikings.
Dallas this Sunday is playing the Minnesota Vikings at Minnesota.
Yeah.
It is the late afternoon game on CBS, yeah.
Well, now this becomes a situation for Dallas. You know, Dallas has – I'm a Cowboy fan, and Dallas have this thing that people that don't like Dallas say about them, that they start fast and then they start declining at a certain time in the season, and then it's almost like an avalanche. It just keeps happening. Well, they just lost the game this past Sunday in overtime. Was it overtime? Yeah, to Green Bay. And with that said, and that was a good game, and Green Bay earned that game. They defeated them. With that said, now Dallas has to face a very exciting, I would say, and I would also say a hot, and if that's Kirk Cousins, is he the quarterback at Minnesota?
Well, yeah.
And with a hot quarterback, Kirk's playing good football, his receivers, and the Vikings are playing good football. Because, hey, you're 8-1 in the NFL, you are playing good football. So that said, to all of us Cowboy fans, and I'm one too, here's our warning. We better have our heads screwed on straight when we go to Minnesota, because this is going to be a tough ball game. That said, Scott, I wanted to bring up something about the SEC in reference to, you know, before the season started, I myself, and I'm sure with a lot of other football fans, especially SEC football fans, we all probably were thinking or believing or hoping or wondering, the SEC teams, there are many teams this season in football in the SEC that didn't show up. The expectations were that the SEC teams, all but probably one, would have had a really tough time this season. But the rest were all supposed to be about 500 at this time. And that did not happen. And a lot of people are talking about the portal and the programs themselves. Well, in my opinion, the portal, it made a difference. It makes a difference. But when you look at what's happened, it's been a letdown. You know, some of the teams that I thought would have be 500 right now in the SEC.
So who exactly are you talking about? I think there's been two. You know, Texas A&M is the biggest disappointment in college football based on expectations. But you know, I don't think many thought that Auburn would be any good, and I don't know anyone that thought Missouri or Vanderbilt would be any good. And those are your four teams that are under 500. So the big thing is A&M. I mean, they had all the hype and all NIL and all this, and they've been terrible.
But then, Scott, what about Mississippi State and what about Arkansas?
Well, they're Mississippi State's above 500. I mean, I'm just talking semantics here. You were talking about being below 500. I mean, they're Arkansas's loss to Liberty was a really bad one. But Ole Miss and Bama have been good. Bama, people act like, oh my God, they're dying, they're withering away. They have two last-second walk-off losses to two of the top six teams in the country. Tennessee's been better than advertised. Kentucky's been disappointing, and I called that. Florida's been about according to plan. Georgia's the best team in college football, and LSU's been a surprise. So I wouldn't say that as a whole it's been awful. I think teams like Kentucky and A&M have been disappointments, but you've also had surprises like LSU and Tennessee is a surprise. No one thought they would be 9-1. So you've had surprises on both sides. Yeah, and I agree with the way you just explained it exactly. That said, LSU success. The success that LSU is having this season, it's shocking to many, and it's unbelievable to many and some. Yet and still, they don't see the things that you probably would want to be looking at. Look at LSU's defense, and look at their offensive line. These people are doing well on both sides of that ball. The offensive line is blocking people. And if you pay close attention to them, if you replay some of their games, these linemen are getting pancake blocks. So Coach Kelly has brought that to the table
with him to LSU about having big linemen and having them to understand their responsibilities as blockers and to do it until the whistle blows and vice versa on defense. He's getting the kids to perform to a level that I would say would bring wins, and they are grinding wins out. And to see LSU do that at such a quick turnaround like this, that's a big thing to believe. So like a phenomenon is happening right there, because that team is going to the SEC championship game, and they still got games to play. Who would have thunk it? Scott. So what I'm going to close is with this. LSU, they are controlling their own destiny. And if the way they close out these games, these final games, though, the A&M game, and when they get to that SEC championship, no matter who they play, if it's Georgia or whatever, they can control everything that happens to them from here on. And one thing about Georgia, I'll close with this. Their coach, he reminds me of a small Vince Lombardi. How he shuffles people around and they snapping the ball fast and they going quick and they taking care of business. I mean, they're like a well-oiled machine. Go play some of Vince Lombardi's old films and watch this thing, and then go back and look at the current Georgia Bulldogs and how they break the huddle and shuffle and go fast, and they are smashing people. Georgia is that machine now. Alabama, we got some work to do over there. So, guys, thank y'all for listening. Y'all have a good one. Support high school football Friday night, and y'all go support the Turkey Bowl at UL starting this Saturday at 8 a.m., and it's going to last till 8 p.m. at night, guys. Those kids have worked hard. They need to see us out there at Cajun Field. Thank y'all so much. Have a good morning.
All right. Thank you, Coach Mitch. Appreciate it. Good to hear Mitch. You know, covers a lot. And sometimes a little in a lot, but it's good to hear Coach Mitch, man. We're almost out of time here on the Great Scott Show. Yeah, he's talking about the Vikings-Bills game to start. I was watching the Saints just get dominated by a terrible football team on Sunday. It was like going to the dentist watching that Saints-Steelers game. But when it ended, they had the bonus coverage of Vikings-Bills, and the bonus coverage was all I needed to see to say, whoa, this has been the game of the year thus far. It was incredible. The amount of times Buffalo had the game won, then lost, vice versa for Minnesota. And Minnesota had, they were on the wrong end of some missed calls. On the goal line stand, Buffalo had 12 men on the field. And then on the game-tying drive and regulation, there was, a drop ball on the sideline that didn't get reviewed, and Buffalo went down and got the field goal and tied it. But I love football. I love you guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. It was great to be back on the air. I'm feeling great. Tomorrow, Gus Kattengell, Corey Diaz, and more. It's going to be a great Friday. Give me all you got Friday. You're not going to want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. The Dan Patrick Show is next. This is 103.3 The GOAT. Simulcast on 1420. It's The GOAT, the greatest sports talk of all time.